Welcome to Faith and Freedom. For the next few minutes, we hope to inform, inspire, and encourage you as we discuss legal victories and challenges to your fundamental freedom and religious liberties. Faith and Freedom comes to you from Liberty Counsel, a civil liberties education and legal defense organization. Join us now as Matt Staver, founder and chairman of Liberty Counsel, explains the latest legal issues all across this country. In the courtrooms of America, Liberty Counsel is winning the battle for your constitutional freedom.
Republicans propose a federal marriage protection amendment to the United States Constitution. Is this the answer to protect religious liberty, the natural family, and natural marriage? We'll discuss it today on Faith and Freedom. I'm Matt Barber, Vice President of Liberty Counsel Action. Joining me in studio, Steve Crampton, Liberty Counsel's Vice President and General Counsel. Steve, Liberty Counsel has had dealings in the past with Congressman Tim Holzkamp, a Republican from Kansas. He has proposed a constitutional amendment to the United States Constitution that will simply recognize the age-old definition of marriage, as it's always been, as being between one man and one woman for purposes of federal law across the board. Is this a good thing?
I think it really is a good thing, Matt. We are on the brink of, I think, destroying the foundations of our civilization. And marriage is one of those essential components, the glue that holds us together. And I wish it were not as late in the day as it was. I will be shocked if this particular amendment gains any traction in the Senate today, overwhelmingly Democratic as it is, and people kind of falling all over themselves, Republican and Democrat alike, to endorse same-sex marriage and say now that it's a wonderful alternative. It's not a good alternative, and it's one of the few issues where I think it is appropriate for the Congress to take action and remove it out of the states. You know, Justice Kennedy wants to say in the Prop 8 cases that were just heard in the Supreme Court that it ought to be left state to state and so forth and hold up that championing federalism. But this is not an issue that plays well in a federalist context. If your state recognizes same-sex marriage and mine doesn't, and you have couples that relocate from your state to mine, you know, what happens? What happens with the kids? What happens with the benefits? That was a lot of the argument in the DOMA context where the same-sex forces won. We're going to have now the legal battle played out where you've got a full faith and credit problem. As you well know, the Constitution guarantees each state must give full faith and credit to another state's judicial acts and judgments and so forth. Well, when they confer marriage and marriage benefits on a couple in their state, but we don't in our state, you've got a conundrum for legal purposes.
Now, there is a caveat associated with that. Unless one state views another state's public policy as repugnant or a violation of their own public policy and long-standing tradition and so forth. But didn't Kennedy really lay the groundwork in his DOMA decision,
yes,
citing animus and so forth as the sole possible
right,
motive for a marriage protection amendment of any kind, state or federal, or an act like DOMA, the Defense of Marriage Act. If it's only hatred and bigotry and animus with nothing to support that assertion, that offensive assertion,
yes,
then isn't he really laying the groundwork to say that the full faith and credit clause trumps states, the federalism argument? He's kind of having his cake and eating it too, isn't he?
Sure looks that way,
Yeah.
doesn't it? And that's why there was so much celebration on the part of the proponents of same-sex marriage after the decision was announced. They read that opinion, and I think, as you just intimated, as setting the stage for a full-blown coast-to-coast recognition of same-sex marriage and eradication of traditional marriage as at least only one man, one woman. So, we're set up here, and I really appreciate Congressman Holzkamp's introducing of this amendment. And now it's in many respects up to us, isn't it, to motivate and let our congressmen hear from us and encourage them to get on board. I really think in many respects we may be too late, but this is a great effort, and I think really necessary. It's essential for our well-being as a nation.
Well, and it's certainly at this point in time, and with the current configuration of the Senate, Certainly the individual who is occupying the Oval Office right now, questionable at best whether or not this could gain any traction whatsoever.
Yes.
But I'm going to borrow from a moment from progressives who, anytime they get a step in what they view as the right direction,
Right.
they'll say this is an important first step. I'm reminded with this, even though it seems against all odds that there's any chance, isn't it an important first step? And B, I'm reminded of other individuals who certainly in the climate of their day would have been laughed out, and said, this is impossible, you'll never get it done. William Wilberforce in Great
Amen.
Britain, who for decades sought to end slavery.
Yes.
in Great Britain. He took an important first step, then an important second step, a third step, all
And
the way
stayed
until
with it.
he finally
Yes.
got it done. And as the lines have been drawn, and as we see more and more of people's religious freedom being crushed
Yes.
by the homosexualist juggernaut and by the government who supports that radical agenda, I think we may start to see some momentum gather for this kind of a constitution.
I really hope you're right. And I think one of the challenges we face is many of our church-going believers in traditional marriage do not yet see the threat. They think it's perfectly okay. Let the homosexuals have their same-sex marriage. We're fine. They're not bothering anyone, blah, blah, blah. They don't see how close we are to the full frontal assault on religious freedom, and it's not just about marriage, as you well know. It's interesting in that context to note that, like the Scandinavian countries that have long been real lax on marriage laws and allowing same-sex marriage, you really don't have heterosexuals or homosexuals getting married anymore. Canada, where they recognized same-sex marriage over 10 years ago, it's less than 1% of the same-sex couples that bother to get married. And that plays out in heterosexual couples as well. Ultimately, you have children who don't even know where the real family is anymore. It's just a disaster for society. We've got to wake up now and seize it back. We are on the high ground morally. This is truth. And so, in one sense, we ought to get behind it full bore and get folks motivated and pass it. It's the right thing to do. It ought to be a no-brainer. 10 years ago, it would have been, but here we are.
Well, you've hit on something very important here. Marriage obviously is the fundamental cornerstone of any healthy society, and the left is taking a sledgehammer to that cornerstone. And that is the goal. A tiny percentage of a small percent, 1 to 3% of the population identifies as all the reliable studies.
That's right. Even their own studies.
Even their own studies show 1 to 3%.
Yeah.
A tiny, minute percentage of that small percentage avail themselves of this newfangled notion of same-sex marriage. I've often said it this way, Steve. The truth of the matter is they don't want the white picket fence. They want to burn down the white picket fence. Isn't marriage itself in the crosshairs? We've had recently in Australia, a lesbian activist admit as much. She says basically, yes, gays and lesbians should absolutely have the right to marry, but really, shouldn't marriage be eliminated altogether? And that's a rough paraphrase, but that's the point behind the homosexual activists' juggernaut here and their push for redefining marriage.
Interestingly enough, there was, right after the marriage decisions by the Supreme Court, within days, a lawsuit filed, no surprise, in California, that alleged not only that it was improper to deny, in this case, an opposite-sex couple's domestic partnership benefits, kind of a strange situation, but goes further and says marriage itself, just as you said, should be abolished. After all, isn't it just a religious institution that's kind of a holdover from days gone past when, the church kind of ruled in society and so forth? Do away with the whole thing. So it is being spoken not just in the public square, but even in our federal courts as we speak.
Yeah. Well, folks, scary times. The state confers a benefit on the institution of legitimate marriage because legitimate marriage confers a benefit on society. And I've often said that when you introduce counterfeit money into commerce, it devalues the dollar. When you introduce counterfeit marriage into society, it devalues the institution of marriage and it hurts society. It breaks down religious freedom. It harms children. It breaks down the family structure, and it takes a sledgehammer to that fundamental cornerstone of any healthy society, natural marriage. Go to lc.org to find out how you can become part of Liberty Counsel's ministry. Help us to defend marriage, to defend religious liberty. The two are inexorably linked. When marriage is deconstructed and radically redefined, religious liberty is out the door. Go to lc.org or give us a call, 1-800-671-1776. We need your help to stand for marriage.
You have been listening to Faith and Freedom with Liberty Counsel. We hope that we have motivated you to stand up for your faith, family, and freedom. We can accomplish a lot when we work together. Get informed and get involved today. Sign up for our free monthly newsletter, The Liberator. We will send it out to you free of charge. Stay informed with our Liberty Alert email updates. Just click on the website at www.lc.org or call us at 1-800-671-1776. Tune in next time to learn more about your rights right here on Faith and Freedom.